Good morning. This is Tony Campana with Aviat, and we're excited today to share with you the power of UHP. Today presenting will be Hassan Dekrub. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that throughout the presentation, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So feel free to ask as many questions as you like. And at the end of the presentation, Hassan will be answering and going through those questions. Also, we will be randomly selecting 5 winners for our $100 gift card. So those will be announced, the winners will be announced during this presentation after the Q&A session. So with that, Hassan, go ahead and get us started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. And hello, everyone. So today, for our agenda, we're going to be talking about a little bit about Aviat history, and also the reasoning behind why we are introducing the 11 gigahertz ultra high power radios, and that is the interference and the rising pressure in the 6 gigahertz band. And then we're going to introduce the ultra high power radios, and then how to use the ultra high power in a multi-band configuration, then frequency assurance software to also address and detect interference, and we'll open up the floor for Q&A. So starting with Aviat, so we are the most trusted microwave provider. We are headquartered in Austin, Texas. We have presence in over 30 countries. We deployed over 1 million systems worldwide. So we are considered a global leader in microwave systems. And we have over 70 years of experience in microwave and over 200 technology patents. And we are listed on NASDAQ as AVNW, Aviat Networks. And we have solutions that range from microwave wireless to microwave routers, solutions for automation and software-defined networking, and professional services. So we have over 75 years of microwave experience going back to the Linkbird days. Linkbird days in 1944, and we spent a lot of time under the as a microwave division in the Harris Corporation until 2007, when Harris, the microwave division, and the Stratix merged to become Harris Stratix. And then the company was relabeled as Aviat Networks in 2010. And also in 2022, we acquired Redline Communication because we saw the rise in the private LTE network demand. Now moving on to the interference. The very first question that comes to mind when we are looking at interference is, how will interference look like? Will it affect my network? If it's not affecting my network now, is it going to affect it over time? And will my NMS system actually detect interference? Will it tell me that I have interference, or is that alarm due to other reasons? So, and also whenever we are investigating for interference, how can we analyze for interference? How can we actually determine that this is interference or not? So all of these questions come to mind whenever we have interference. So let's first understand what is interference. And it all starts with our wanted signal is expecting, no other signals to be around, so that we can only receive our own signal. Once we start having interference from a adjacent or neighboring wireless equipment, such as an overlapping frequency, another microwave system, or even a Wi-Fi unlicensed radio, so all of these will cause some unwanted noise that will eventually, if that noise is great, it will potentially cause a link failure down the line. So interference by itself is, just this example, it's just as a, if we have a room full of kids, and the more kids there is in that room, the more it is harder to work. And sometimes it's only one kid can actually do all that kind of distraction. But yeah. And talking about interference, so we are now having over almost 500,000 of Wi-Fi 6E device already out in the market. These ranges from maybe like iPhones, Samsung phones, also very low power access points. So we have millions of these access points that are already deployed in houses, in the US, and almost 100 million of these access points are deployed worldwide. And we're expecting over 1 billion in 2025. So they are starting to become a significant threat to the mission critical microwave links. And to make things worse, we also have some rogue operators that are also deploying the Wi-Fi 6E devices in outside the regulatory boundaries, and that is also another angle of that is affecting our microwave links. So on top of all of that, the FCC came up with the regulation to enable Wi-Fi 6E device, but all of these measures are, as we see it, are ill-equipped to adequately protect against all these Wi-Fi 6E device. The reason is, first of all, they came up with the AFC, which is the Automated Frequency Coordination, and they actually approved 13 of these AFCs that will be available within this quarter and the next quarter, so commercially available. And even though they will be commercially available and will start to allow outdoor access points to start, transmitting in outdoor environment, there's still currently there is, all these testing are have a lot of unresolved issues. So that's the very first problem with the AFCs. Second one is also there for the very low power devices. What the FCC regulated is they need to use the contention-based protocol, CBP, and this has been successful in the 5.8, mainly because, so first of all, what is the contention-based protocol? It's if I am a new device, I have a new device that is trying to transmit in a certain environment, I will scan the environment for frequencies. If I see that one of these frequencies have a receive level greater than 62 dB, then I won't use this frequency. So that worked great in the TDD world, mainly because in a 5.8 system, we have a access point and also we have a client. Whenever they are communicating, they will be communicating over the same frequency. So if I'm next to one or the other, I will simply, I will know that, this is the frequency that they are using. Well, if we are talking about the 6 gigahertz, now the systems are FDD. So each one of those sites will be using a different frequency. If that device is sitting next to one of the receiver, he will not pick up the far end transmitter. And to make things worse, also, if that far end transmitter is using ATPC, then he will also be transmitting a lower power. So it will make it even harder for that device to pick up on that frequency and not use it. So that's the very first problem. They also talking about including an algorithm where it will monitor the nearby transmitter and using the expected T2R, so that they will expect what is the far end transmitter's frequency. But also we all know that a lot of time in congested area, the coordinators coordinated different T2Rs, and if they use that algorithm, these links that have unusual T2R will also have problems. So CBP is also another, even though it worked with the 5.8 unlicensed 5.8, we doubt that it will work with the Wi-Fi 6, in the 6 gigahertz band. And last one is for the FCC enforcement. We just saw very slow, very slow reaction time when it comes to interference. So also customers are voicing their concerns. Everyone is concerned about the Wi-Fi 6E and how they will disrupt their critical traffic. So some of the solutions are to move to fiber and some of them are, when fiber is within short distance, but also 11 gigahertz is the best and have the best TCO when it comes to lower cost. Same TCO that we had for the 6 gigahertz still apply at 11 gigahertz because we can use the same antennas, same rate type of radios. And so as long as the 11 gigahertz can match the 6 gigahertz availability, then that is a good alternative. Again, just whenever we on top of also reusing the 11 gigahertz, we can also back the performance of 11 gigahertz by using multiband. What that means is we can pair 6 and 11 gigahertz and let the 6 gigahertz handle the instances where we have rain, and then 11 gigahertz to mitigate for interference. So let's move on to the Wi-Fi, so the 11 gigahertz ultra high power radio. So let's introducing 11 gigahertz radio. It does deliver, industry leading RF power. What I mean by that is it will have 38 dB at antenna port. So at antenna port, this is after all the filters. So we're talking about RFUs that have 40 dB of transmit power. And then with all the filters that go between the antenna port and the RFU, we have 38 dB at antenna port, and that is guaranteed over time, over different temperatures. And that is 5 dB additional transmit power on top of what we had for the extra high power at 11 gigahertz. Using the very same small footprint, and we can support non-ACCP and ACCP ACU. What that means is it supports two adjacent channels, two 80 megahertz adjacent channels or non-adjacent. Also, we support 4096 QAM and also a full 80 megahertz channels, and can be configured as protected and non-protected. So some of the advantages of ultra high power at 11 gigahertz are, the first one is the additional of 5 dB on top of what we had for the extra high power. So across the board, we can have 5 dB, whether extra over what the EHP radio, whether we start from QPSK all the way up to 4096 QAM. And if we look at this graph closely, we can notice where we can actually have the transmit power at 4096 QAM with the ultra high power is matching what the transmit power at 16 QAM of the extra high power. So that is a lot of power coming from the ultra high power. And also taking advantage of the physics, if we swap a 6 gigahertz antenna with an 11 gigahertz antenna, we gain right away 6 dB of extra system gain per antenna. And of course, just because a microwave link have two antennas, so we will have 6 dB of extra system gain on the transmit antenna and 6 dB of transmit gain on the receiver antenna. So we will have an extra 12 dB of extra system gain over the link. So let's put that into an example. If I had a link that is currently running with 6 gigahertz and delivering 155 megabit per second in a 30 megahertz 128 QAM link, and we want to deliver the same capabilities at 11 gigahertz, we can use a 16 QAM 80 megahertz channel, 241 megabit per second throughput, and by using these, the ultra high power radio and also this profile, we can get better receive threshold, also better transmit power, and we can get a better system gain from swapping the antenna from 6 gigahertz to 11 gigahertz. And of course, the 11 gigahertz has a little bit more path loss compared to 6 gigahertz. and also more attenuation when it comes to the waveguide. But net between if we move to 11 gigahertz with the ultra high power, we can, and also using a lower modulation, we can actually get an extra system gain, even though we are going to 11 gigahertz. So some more advantages of 11 gigahertz is at 6 gigahertz, the channels that we have are 30 megahertz. We have 60 megahertz channels, and that's where we stop. While at 11 gigahertz, we open up, or the 11 gigahertz have 80 megahertz channels, and also there's multiple 80 megahertz channels. So there's more capacity at 11 gigahertz. Second thing is also we can use the dual band that we talked about, where we are pairing 6 and 11 gigahertz, and also still has the lower tower, lower TCO, lower total cost of ownership. What that means is currently with the 6 gigahertz, we are limited with the minimum antenna size being 6-foot antenna. If we are able to meet our reliability with a smaller antenna at 11 gigahertz, we can actually reduce the antenna size. And now we can go with a 4-foot antenna or 3-foot antenna. So that will lower our tower leases, and also will also lower our cost to interference mitigation. Now we can mitigate interference with a lower cost rather than going in more expensive solutions, and we can migrate over time. And actually, we found that we can actually replace 95 all 6 gigahertz links registered with the FCC when we start using the 11 gigahertz ultra high power. And we were surprised, that we were able to actually, move that big number of links from 6 gigahertz to 11 gigahertz. And the method that we use to come up with those predictions are, first of all, we looked at all the 6 gigahertz links that we have in the FCC database. And then we came up with a range versus range zone. So what that means is we looked at all the range zones and what is the link ranges that we had in those zones. And we ran path calculations for in each one of those range zones using the same antenna size, same waveguide, same, and using different radio types, whether it is a high power, extra high power, and ultra high power at 11 gigahertz. And we were trying to meet the 5 nines reliability for the 155 megabit per second, or 1 OC3, using the 11 gigahertz 80 megahertz 16 QAM or a 40 megahertz 64 QAM. And what we found out was that we were able to meet 100% of all of those. We can migrate 100% of the links that are in zones A through D1. And for zone D2, that has also a big number of microwave links, we were able to migrate 91% of all of those links. And also when in zone E, that's where we have Florida, that is ground zero for rain and intense rain. So we were able to migrate 48% of all of those links to 11 gigahertz when we are using the ultra high power radio. So, and then after we came up with this prediction, we started using we went and started looking at existing networks that we have deployed, whether they are state networks, whether they are electric utility networks in different train zones, and we started calculating what will be the reliability if we start migrating those networks to 11 gigahertz. And what we came up with was, if we replace those 6 gigahertz links to 11 gigahertz using the high power radio, IRU 600 high power radio, so we were able to migrate 44% of those links to 11 gigahertz. If we actually use the extra high power, which has a transfer power up to 32 dB, that one we were able to add another 24% of all the links. And if we start using the ultra high power radio, we added another 16% on top of what we were able to migrate, using the extra high power. And if we add or increase the antenna size by just one extra size and the ultra high power 11 gigahertz radio, we were able to migrate another 11% of all of those links. And last, there was this, 5% of all these 6 gigahertz links that were just, too long or in regions that, have a lot of rain, and we were not able to migrate them to 11 gigahertz and still also meet the 5 nines reliability. So the question that comes to mind always is, do I have to actually migrate completely out of the 6 gig so that I can mitigate interference? And the answer is actually no, because we can actually use a multi-band solution where we can pair both the 6 and 11 gigahertz in the same antenna. So now we also have these multi-band antenna that can support 6 and 11. And if we actually use the ultra high power solution, we can get 5 nines reliability for 155 megabit per second at 11 gigahertz, and also 5 nines reliability for 155 megabit at 6 gigahertz. Pairing them together, we can have 5 nines reliability for 300 megabit per second. That is the combined throughput between 6 and 11 links, and we can have also 4 nines reliability for 1 gig of throughput out of that link. Of course, we support ACM, we support Ethernet bandwidth notification. So whenever there is a degradation of the available throughput, we can inform the connected router about the current throughput, right? So this solution can benefit 86% of all the links, providing 5 nines reliability for a certain amount of throughput, and also actually, if you elected to go this way, you can deploy it on all your current 6 gigahertz links, and the 11 gigahertz will provide you with reliability against or protection against interference when there is no rain, and then whenever there is rain, the 6 gigahertz and also the high system gain of the lower modulation at 11 gigahertz will also provide you with more capacity, reliable capacity, I should say. So this kind of solution will provide you with protection from rain effect at 6 gigahertz, and also Wi-Fi 6E protection at by using the 11 gigahertz links. And if we're looking at this solution, also you can get more throughput to your link. Everyone is looking to increase the available throughput for the link, so you can get anywhere from 2 times to over 10 times more capacity for your links using this methodology. And what I mean by that is, if you are in a frequency congested area, what I mean by that is, if you are in an area that has a lot of 6 gigahertz links and you cannot coordinate another channel at 6 gigahertz, you can keep that 30 megahertz channel and you can coordinate 1 or 2 channels, and you can have anywhere from 1 gig to 1.7 gig of throughput by combining that single 30 megahertz channels at 6 gigahertz and the 1 or 2 80 megahertz channels at 11 gigahertz. If you were, you have your link in a non-congested area, non-congested 6 gigahertz area, then you can actually, coordinate 2 of those 60 megahertz channels at 6 gigahertz and another 2 of the 80 megahertz at 11 gigahertz, and you can have 2.5 gigabit per second of throughput. And those will look like, this, where if you, currently we'll have the IRA 600 that is 2 RU high, and we can deploy 1 or 2 channels on that in that chassis. So in this scenario, we're starting with 1 RFU that is capable of providing 500 megabit per second, and we can augment it by adding a waveguide and an ultra high power RFU to that same chassis. So now we have 1 RFU operating at 6 gigahertz and another RFU operating at 11 gigahertz, and we have waveguide that is taking that throughput and frequency all the way to the antenna. So now we have access to both the 6 and 11 gigahertz bands. And we can augment it later on by adding, if we need more capacity, more than 1 gigabit per second, we can augment it by simply just without touching the antenna system. From that point, we can just add another radio and get access to more bandwidth by deploying more channels on that antenna. So last, if we are not ready to move to the 11 gigahertz yet, we have to start looking for interference, and this is by we have the frequency assurance software that can monitor for interference. So the frequency assurance software will detect interference, will analyze the interference, and provide you with alarms that are about interference, if you are actually subjected to interference or not. It will show you the trend of the interference in your network and interference that on your links, and also provide with a detailed and executive reports that you can use when preparing your report, an analysis report, and so they can submit it to the FCC or the AFCs that allow the interferers to use that frequency. And then it also has the paperless chart recorder integrated with it within the frequency assurance software, so you don't need another software for you to get access to the paperless chart recorder. So the FAS, or frequency assurance software, has a patent pending on the algorithm, and it works on any Aviat radio, whether it is the Eclipse radio, whether it is the WTM or a CTR radio. It does not work with the legacy radios like the Constellation or Megastar radios, but it can be deployed in the network, and you don't need to do any changes to the hardware or software or firmware. And it is offered in a on-premise or hosted, and also it can be monitored by the Aviat NOC as a add-on service on top of it. So what we do with the FAS is we monitor for migrate KPIs such as the receive level, the signal to noise ratio, severely error second, and bit error second, and we categorize the interference in multiple levels, whether they are interference that are happening in the background. You are not seeing them yet, but it starts to detect them before they become a traffic affecting interference. And and I always advise that let's start to address these issues as soon as they show up in the FAS, so that they don't start to cause any error seconds on your link, stop dropping packets, and so forth. And also, what we also started to support third-party vendor radios. So we 2 months ago we announced that we are starting to support the Nokia radios on the FAS. So whether you are connected to an MSS or a 7705 that is supporting microwave radios, we can monitor for interference on those Nokia radios. And also we are looking for the next vendor that we will start supporting them for frequency assurance software and interference. That being said, I will open up the floor for Q&A.
Just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to go to the questions section and ask away. Hassan, I do see some questions in there already.
Yeah, I cannot see them on my side, so if you can help me.
Yeah, absolutely. I can ask them, and apologize if I misread anything here. So the first question is, what's the maximum recommended link distance to maintain 95 nines availability?
So it really
At,
depends.
oh, I'm sorry, it continues. At the 64 QAM modulation rate in high rain rate areas like Oklahoma, South Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas.
Yeah. So it's always a matter of um, the what do you call it? So it's always a matter of the rain zone, and also the modulation as per the question was alluding to. So I think we need to look at the path calculation, run the path calculation, use the antenna, different antenna sizes, and yeah, and then we can know what is the maximum distance that we can have in that region.
Okay. Are there dual pole antennas available to go with the dual band radios?
Yes. So all these multi-band radios will have a access to both polarities at 6 and 11. So you will have access to both, VNH on 6 and 11, and the unused polarity will just be will not be used.
Okay. Since moving to 11 gigahertz will narrow the beam width on a comparable 6 gigahertz antenna, what issues should we consider for decoupling in long paths in humid areas?
Um, yeah, so if we are using the 6 gigahertz, sorry, 6 foot antenna, we have seen these issues with 6 gigahertz, maybe 12-foot antennas, where we were advising to go or with smaller antenna, going from 12 feet antenna down to maybe 10-foot antenna or 8-foot antenna, where we have uh, a wider beam width. So if we start seeing issues on those links, then we can actually start going with smaller antennas, and so to reduce the decoupling at 11 gigahertz. But I think it won't be an issue until we start going with excessively big antennas. And in the 6 gigahertz, we saw this at 12-foot antennas. That's where we were starting to recommend to go down to 10-foot antennas, for example, or 8-foot antennas. But if we are going at 11 gigahertz, unless you are looking at a 10-foot antenna, I think it will, we won't see these issues that often.
Okay. Yes, this question pertains to, will copies of the slides be sent over?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct. What is the maximum distance with 11 gigahertz UHP radios?
So yeah, just like the first question, it really depends, right? In zones where we're able to cover 100% of all of those links, so we looked at uh, the distances of those links in that area, and we were able to cover them either with the same antenna size or one antenna size over, and we were able to cover most of 100% of those links. So in those zones, we were able to cover them 100% with the same antenna size or one size higher, bigger. In other zones, it really depends, right? Depending on the zone, depending on the modulation, what is the minimum modulation that you can accommodate. If we can go down maybe to QPSK, then we can go longer distance and still provide 5 nines reliability. Um, if your critical traffic is greater than 200, than 155 megabit per second, then that will shorten the maximum distance. So it's all about what is the critical traffic that you need, that needs to meet 590 reliability. That will dictate, how long of a link path we can deploy.
Okay. Next question. 11 gigahertz is unlicensed frequency?
No, it is
Question
a
mark.
license.
Can you say that? I'm sorry, Hassan. Can you state that
It
again?
is, so it is a licensed frequency,
Okay, perfect.
and currently accessible by, unlicensed Wi-Fi 6E devices. So, yeah.
Okay. Using an existing antenna for multi-band operation, did you consider that the existing antenna is designed for 6 gigahertz band operation, not 11 gigahertz? What antenna gains do you use for the 11 gigahertz calculations?
So what I did is we looked at ComSearch data sheets, and we looked at the system, the antenna gains in the upper, in the 11 gigahertz band. So that was one, when we're looking at the antenna gains, and also the antenna gain at 6 gigahertz. That is for the lower 6 gigahertz band. So the antenna gain for the lower 6 were also used. So in this way, that's how we came up with uh, uh, the system gain of the antennas.
Okay. Can you please address the bi-band antenna performance? How much worse is the performance compared to 6 gigahertz and 11 gigahertz antennas?
So I currently don't have um, data on those antennas to compare. So but those are coming to market by the end of the year by Comscope, and yeah, so they will it's the same antennas that we currently have at 6 and 11, but they will have feed horns that supports both 6 and 11, and yeah, so still waiting to see those the performance of those antennas.
Okay. This individual asked 2 questions in a row here. First question is, isn't the interference software an add-on to Provision Plus?
Yes, it is. So it is a module in Provision Plus. So in Provision Plus, we can enable any module by means of a license. So we will install Provision Plus and then enable the modules that we need enabled. And as per the question, yes, we will enable the FAS, Frequency Assurance Software, by means of a license key on Provision Plus.
Okay. And their second question was, can you advise on what Aviat is seeing on path distance limitations on 11 gigahertz links? We have some existing 6 gigahertz links that are 40 miles, 50 miles, and a couple over 60 miles.
Mhm. So what I advise there, first of all, it really depends on the rain region, right? So that is what I first start with, is looking at the rain region. Second thing is I also look at what is the critical traffic. Can we go down to 16 quant? Can we go down to QPSK? So at QPSK 80 megahertz channels, we can actually get 105 megabit per second at 80 megahertz QPSK. Is that enough for the critical traffic? If that's the case, then that will help, we can design the link to meet 5 nines reliability at that modulation. So that's the very first thing. Second thing is, especially on any link, if we actually deploy the multi-band solution, if we keep the 6 gigahertz and the 11 gigahertz, what will happen there is, and of course, using the ultra high power radio, so that we can add more reliability to our 11 gigahertz signal, we can actually achieve ultimate reliability in whether the link is short or long by first of all having more capacity. The 6 gigahertz will give us some capacity. The 11 gigahertz will also give us some capacity at very high availability. And then also the when the 6 gigahertz is affected by interference, the 11 gigahertz will will help it. Whenever there is some rain, maybe a longer path distance will have more chance of having rain zones, so the 6 gigahertz will help there. So the combination of the two will actually make a very solid solution for long path distances, and again also short path distances. I think the multiband is the best of both worlds.
Okay, perfect. We have a couple questions regarding the FAS software. What are the differences between FAS and Provision Plus? If I have Provision, do I need FAS?
Yeah, so Provision does collect most of the data that FAS uses uh, to analyze the collected data. And but what will happen with Provision is that the Provision will collect all that data for you, and then it's going to be up to the user to start looking at all that data, second by second. And then, if you have multiple links, then it becomes a more harder task to accomplish, especially uh, if you wanted to monitor your network constantly. While on the other hand, the FAS, the frequency assurance software, is a 24/7 software that is doing all of these repetitive tasks for you on just a software that is running all the time. And whenever there is interference, it will alarm you right away that there is interference. Instead of, if I'm an engineer, maybe I will analyze my network maybe once a month, once every 2 months. It's really depend on how big my network is and if I have other tasks. Well, here the software itself will be monitoring the network 24/7 live, and whenever there is interference, I'll get notified, and I can also go back and I can go back and see any interference that happened the last week, last month, last year, and I can also show a trend of interference that you know um, how my network was performing before a certain time and how it is performing right now, and now I have a concrete data showing how is my network performing, how is my link performing, and so in this way, any time that you are submitting a claim to the FCC or to any entity that is affecting your network, the very first thing they will ask you is, where's the proof uh, that we are actually affecting your link? And this is where those reports, those analysis will come in handy. So it really gives you an on-demand analysis of the interference reports that are already on demand about the interference that are affecting your link. Again, just going back, Provision does have a lot of those data available in different part of the software, while the FAS itself is collecting all of that data and then analyzing them for you on a 24/7 basis.
Excellent. Are the new UHP radios in Aviat design?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they are. Yeah, we have been working on this design for the last 2 years. So we had this technology, and like 2 years ago, on getting an extra 5 dB on top of what we currently have, and we were looking at how do we use it? Is it going to be on, to increase the transmit power on the 6 gig, or is it going to be on the 11 gig? And we were, looking at the problems that we are currently having at 6 gigahertz with the Wi-Fi 6E. We wanted to offer it as a solution so that we can mitigate against interference coming from the Wi-Fi 6E devices. So yeah, it is an Aviat design, Aviat technology. I'm not saying that maybe down the
Well, I
line.
think, yeah, I think that maybe the question was, is it available on Aviat or the design tool?
I need to check. I did
Yeah,
not, check.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the question was referring to is it available if you're building your links in Aviat design tool, if it's available to be selected in there, and
Yeah.
we'll get that checked and answered for you. Um, the expected release date for availability.
So it will be available by Q4 of this year.
Okay. There's many questions here, so trying to get to as many as I can. How we aggregate if we use multi-band and different channel spacing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great question, by the way. So we saw this solution, or the need for having multi-band, once we start seeing the Wi-Fi 6E and their effect on 6 gigahertz links. And we saw that the multi-band is the solution. But 2 years ago, we were not able to aggregate channel sizes that were of different, channel sizes, or channels of different channel sizes. So what I mean by that is, when we wanted to aggregate a 30 megahertz channel from 6 gigahertz, we needed to have another 30 megahertz channels at 11 gigahertz. And that was not the best solution out there. So what we came up with new software releases, now we are able to aggregate a 30 megahertz channels with an 80 megahertz channel. So now we can have a 30 megahertz channels running at 6 gigahertz and a full 80 megahertz channels running at 11 gigahertz, and we can aggregate the two together. We can have multiple 30 megahertz, multiple 80 megahertz channels, or it can be 60 megahertz channels at 6 gig and an 80 megahertz at 11 gig. Different channel sizes are supported with new software releases in the radio. So that's the very first thing, that is support for multiple software releases. 2 years ago, that was not available. With new softwares, now we support different channel sizes. The second thing is also how we are aggregating the two channels. So we have the layer 1 link aggregation, which is a very efficient method to aggregate the throughput from different channels by equally distributing the traffic between the two channels, or multiple channels. If we have multiple, 3 plus 0, 4 plus 0, then our traffic will be distributed equally over all of these channels, depending on the available throughput of each one of those channels. And so what I mean by that is, if channel 1 is, maybe 155 meg or 150 megabit per second, channel 2 is 300. So there's a 1/3 and 2/3 ratio between the two. So 1/3 of the traffic will go on the first channel, 2/3 of the traffic will go on the second channel. So that's what I mean by very efficient use of both channels to their maximum throughput. So yeah, and also if we use also adaptive modulation, also the layer 1 link aggregation algorithm will also adapt to the available throughput on both of them. And yeah, if one of them is not available, then all the traffic will go on the remaining channels.
Perfect. Where and how do I get range zones data for the continental United States?
We can, it is It is part of the presentation deck, but I can also add to it the some white papers that shows the rain zones. Yeah, we
Okay.
have many technical or white papers that talk about the rain zones and what to expect in those rain zones.
I think we got through a lot of these here. Some of them are duplicate questions, so I'm trying to avoid asking duplicates. Let's see here, Hassan. I think that covers a lot of the questions. If we didn't get to the questions, I apologize for overlooking them. We are getting clarification on the question regarding Aviat design, whether the radios are available on that tool. The answer is not yet. We are working on finding the answer of when those will be available. So let me just see if there's any more additional questions that came in. Yeah, there are a couple more here. So in a multi-band 6 gigahertz and 11 gigahertz application, will the IRU 600 support traditional RX diversity and TX diversity along with monitor hot standby?
So yeah, um, so all filter combinations can be supported at 6 gigahertz. If we are here talking about frequency diversity or um, space diversity, um, split TX. So all of these configuration are supported, whether it is 6 gigahertz, where most of these links are diversity are used, and also if you wanted to support space diversity and frequency diversity at 11 gigahertz, those are also supported there as well. So all combinations of diversity methodologies are supported, whether it is a 6 gigahertz or 11 gigahertz on the all indoor IRU 600.
Okay. When will path loss RSD files for these radios be available?
Good question. Yeah, so I need to check on that and then get back to you. I need to get that answered.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer right now.
How well does this work over water? Water, excuse me.
So it behaves the similar to 6 gigahertz, maybe a little bit better just because of a narrower beam width. But still, if I would still consider using space diversity, maybe with space diversity, yeah, if there is reflection, then we need to use space diversity there. So just similar things that similar methodologies that we use with the 6 gigahertz, we'll use with the 11 gigahertz. The fact that it is 11 gigahertz does not uh, change the way that or change the way that we design the microwave links way different. What I mean by that is if a link requires space diversity at 11 gigahertz, then we do support and we will deploy a space diversity on those links.
Okay. I think we have time for a couple more questions here that just came in. Is this session recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. And will it be sent out? Yes. The recording as well as the slides will be sent out. Let's see here. What hardware is required to convert an existing 6 gigahertz antenna for 11 gigahertz operation?
So we can reuse the whether you have an Eclipse radio or a CTR, we can use the existing rack 60 or rack 70. So you can keep the same modem. You can keep the same, whether it is rack 60 or rack 70, same Eclipse radio, and all we're gonna be changing is just the RF. And also, we will need to upgrade the software so that we can support the newer radio type that was not available in older softwares, and that will be it. So we only need to change the radio, the RF part, and we can keep the modem and the Eclipse radio untouched there. And we can support the multiband or just moving from 6 to 11.
Perfect. Table of transmit power versus QAM versus data throughput. Is that available?
Yeah, absolutely. So that will be part of the spec sheets and also the path loss files. So that will be available. Yep.
Okay, perfect. I think we're about out of time here. If we didn't get to your questions, feel free to ask them to your dedicated account manager, or you can ask Hassan directly. Or we'll go through these questions again and make sure that I got to them. And if we didn't, we'll be sure to answer your questions. Great questions, a lot of great questions. So we do appreciate you asking the questions. Now for the winners. Here are the winners that were randomly selected. I do apologize if I mispronounce your name. I have Lawrence Wilson, Stephen Mundal, Rick Grace, Juan Ruiz, Jacob Wheely. This is Tony Campana with Aviat. I will be sending each of you an email so we can schedule a way for those gift cards to get to you. Hassan, any departing comments you want to make regarding UHP?
No, just thank you for attending today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you all. That will conclude today's webinar. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.